There's a lot happening with New Jersey's child welfare system. We want to help you make sense of it and share our story. This is DCF on the Air.
This is DCF on the Air, and I'm Jason Butkowski. In child welfare practice, the word kinship raises a whole bunch of different ideas. It's one of our priorities at the department, but when we say that word kinship, it brings to mind something different depending on how you're relating to a program or an initiative. So today we have three experts. I told them I was going to call them experts, but three experts from three different programs, and we're going to settle this once and for all. This is the Kinship Cage Match. So I'm going to turn it over to them to introduce themselves, and then we'll get into the conversation.
Hello, my name is Takysha Livingston, and I am the supervising team lead for the Kinship Navigator Program.
Good morning, my name is Kimyatta Larmore, and I'm with the Office of Resource Families. I'm a casework supervisor.
Hello, I'm Felice Elam. I am the KLG subsidy supervisor under adoption operations.
Welcome to DCF on the Air.
Thank you.
So my first question, and I alluded to this in my intro, but the word kinship, it's one of our priorities at DCF. It's how we relate to families. It's how we're supporting them differently than maybe we have in the past. But I'm wondering, from each of your program's perspectives, what does that word kinship mean?
Okay, I'll take it from here. For the Kinship Navigator Program, or KNP, a kinship caregiver is anyone that is caring for a non-biological child. So it could be a friend, a relative, godparent, aunt, uncle, sibling. That's what is defined as a kinship caregiver for our program.
And kinship means anybody with a significant, familiar, or emotional connection to the child and family. It could be relatives, extended family, family friend. It could be a coach. It could be someone in the community, but that person who has a significant emotional connection to the child and family.
So it really isn't just family or extended family. It's really anyone who has that relationship, like family or like family.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Correct. And
Please.
I'm almost like a ditto of what they have said, but it's the grandmothers, the grandfathers, aunts, uncles, the sisters and brothers, the godparents, could be teachers, counselors, and also with our program is those unrelated home placements for children who are with not the family member, but someone who's willing to have that child become a part of their family, and also for the family, the birth family, for them to all connect and to be a village, for each other and be that support.
I think that's a great concept, the idea of village as, we're raising up this supportive structure around families.
Correct.
So great. It seems like, thinking about these different programs, that kinship is really on a little bit of a continuum, right? It's from something that might be lighter touch, not a whole lot of involvement with the Child Protective Services end of our service, all the way through to like something a little more structured. Starting off with something that's maybe a little lighter touch, that maybe we're providing supports to families, but they're not as deeply involved in the Child Protective Services system. Takysha, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about the Kinship Navigator Program. What are some of the benefits to families, and what are some of the criteria for eligibility?
Thank you. The Kinship Navigator Program is a more informal situation. The caregiver doesn't have to have legal custody of the child. However, they do have to prove that they are primary caregivers, and there's a number of documentation that is collected to support that. But again, even a caregiver that is a parent of a parenting team, they can apply for our program for that grandchild. So as far as eligibility, the family cannot be involved with DCPNP. However, once that involvement, the child is no longer involved with DCPNP, the family can connect with us for services. And then some of the services that they'll be able to access is the Kinship Wraparound grant, which helps to supplement some of their expenses they've paid for the child, from clothing, furniture, things of that nature, emergency assistance that may be needed for back rent or utility payments, food and other items like that. We also assist caregivers with linkage to community services and resources that the family may need, such as a family success center or benefits program. We also do caregiver support events, so it could be caregiver support groups or a family event or activity. So we do a number of things in addition to helping families file for Kinship Legal Guardianship. They do not have to pay an attorney fee. We are licensed to file the Kinship Legal Guardianship application.
Yeah. So it sounds like, because our system has a vested interest in promoting these familiar caregiver settings for children who need them, we're making sure that we're out there providing some level of support. These families aren't on their own trying to navigate all of the different structures, or, I might qualify for this or I might not qualify for that, or now I've got to figure out as a grandmother how I'm going to, on fixed income, support my grandchildren in a kinship setting, correct?
Correct.
Great. Thinking about some of the more formal arrangements, and Kimyatta, this one's for you. The Kinship Resource Homes, that's sort of our informal name, internally, but can you explain a little bit what that is? How does that work as far as licensing? How does our involvement with the family look?
Kinship Resource Homes are temporary out-of-home placements, as with our traditional foster homes, in which in New Jersey we have replaced the term foster home with resource homes to accurately reflect the resource parent's supportive role to the children, their family, and the professional team. The Kinship Resource Homes, as with our traditional foster home, serves as a critical role in supporting reunification efforts, the primary goal for most children entering out-of-home care. To become a licensed Kinship Resource Home, caregivers must undergo a comprehensive home study and licensing process, same as a traditional foster home. There are specific training requirements that caregivers must complete as well as part of this process. But for Kin, we try to be a bit more flexible. As many of you may or may not know, the new federal rule that allows states to have separate licensing standards for Kin here in New Jersey, that will be forthcoming. So that will be something that that we will be doing here in New Jersey. Great. As the months come.
Great. So my sense, and so I know that Kinship Resource Homes, it's really foster homes. It's intended to be like a temporary safety intervention, right? We're providing this space for a young person to have shelter, have that familiar setting, be able to heal from any trauma they may have experienced. With the Kinship Navigator, are those also typically temporary arrangements?
Sometimes it can be. Again, they're informal, so it's whatever works for that family.
Okay.
Right?
But I mean, for the most part, our goal as a system is how do we help families come back together? If that family separation as a safety intervention is what's best in that instance to address the immediate safety of the child, we're always trying to get the family back together, to get them reunited. And I think for our Kinship Resource Homes, that's really much on display. These are very temporary. The thing that always struck me about talking about kinship is that, the commissioner puts it as, when you wake up in the middle of the night, you know where the bathroom is. Yes. That sense of safety, that sense of belonging, that sense of, this is okay. Everything is, it's a familiar setting, it's a familiar person. the same holiday traditions. Grandma makes the same spaghetti sauce that mom makes, so it just feels more
Those
like
familiar
home.
connections.
Yeah. Now, on the other side of that is our kinship legal guardianship. So these are more temporary settings. Kinship legal guardianship is really an avenue toward permanency. And Felice, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
With the KLG subsidy program.
Yeah.
So yes, it is considered definitely another permanency option if reunification unfortunately isn't able to be accomplished. So with the KLG subsidy program, it is granted through court order, and it's a long-standing one. It's until the child has reached the age of majority, not like a custody order where they might have to go back every 3 months, 6 months, or a year. So with the KLG subsidy program, they receive a subsidy each month, regardless of where the family resides, and they're also eligible for the New Jersey Medicaid. So also with that, the families, we're there to help them through anything that they're going through this life of the process. Now the birth parents, can come back to ask for the KLG to be vacated if they feel as though they're able to now handle the child themselves, but the division will become involved to make sure that's okay, and that's through court. Also, the KLG caregivers could ask for it to be vacated as well, for it to be ended. If they become sick or if they pass, then, things would have to be worked out. There is also with us, they have a subsidy agreement that they fill out, that they sign, that gives them all the provisions of the program and what's involved. There's also with that a successor guardian. With the successor guardian, the families can name someone that they want to care for the child if they were to pass away or become incapacitated. That's not a guarantee because they still have to go through and, there has to be carry checks, home license, and so forth. And then also, if something happens, the birth parents definitely have to be notified because their rights are not terminated. So they could even have that option to try and get custody back of the child. With that, they also obtain the New Jersey Medicaid. They'll always be eligible for New Jersey Medicaid, but if they move to another state, then we will also help them to obtain the Medicaid in the new state. Sometimes we're able to do it, sometimes we're not. It depends. That's a lot of more inner workings that have to be done. So if not, they'll have to either put them on their insurance or to go to the county in which they reside in that new state to obtain Medicaid. Also with that, we help them, like say we have this AKLG clinical services, which is adoption/KLG clinical services to help the families if they're going through problems or situations with making that connection and that bond with the child and the child, because this is a traumatic experience, even though they could be with family, but still they're not at home. And it's a whole new situation. So, and they might have some behavioral issues. So it's to help them to work through those situations so that they can become closer and more bonded together. We have flex funds also to help with the families if they're having an issue with maybe the electric bill, or to even help the child if they need tutoring, or if they're horseback riding, maybe computers or whatever may be needed to help if they're going through a hardship. We're there to help them out with that. And we also will refer families to the Kinship Navigator Program too, to help with their wraparound funds and just to be a support to them as well, because we do have a connection with them as well.
Yeah. So what's the difference really between like a KLG arrangement and something that's like more formal, like adoption?
Okay, so adoption is the parental rights are terminated. There is no more connection with the family unless they know each other, and that's their own private situation. KLG is the birth parents will always and can be connected to that child. The parents have the right to visit the child. There's no disconnect at all. Now with the subsidy programs, they're both based on the same. They both receive the money, the subsidy and the Medicaid, which will always continue through. But there, with the KLG, the birth families still can have that connection, even if they're in an unrelated home placement, they still can have that connection to help with those familiar relationships, to broaden them. And like I said, once again, to help with that village and help with the whole family, to bring them together and to be unified and supported and to support that child through life. And to keep, also help with identity purposes and so forth. Adoption is not to say adoption is great, and that sometimes is the only option and the best one, depending on the situation. But with KLG, also, they keep with the family, they keep with their culture, and who they are.
Yeah, no, I think that's fantastic. And it's not a severing of, because I think that's the one thing that we run into. November is National Adoption Month, and we celebrate National Adoption Month at the Department of Children and Families. It's a good thing. It helps young people that are connected to our system connect to forever families. At the same time, there's an aspect to it that we can't ignore that is sort of a severing of that relationship, that previous relationship. And families may have different mechanisms. They may have different types of relationships. There's always a possibility for something that's more informal. For kinship legal guardianship, it seems like that's not quite as severed as it would be in like an adoption scenario, right?
That's correct.
Right.
Yeah, the connection is there. It will always and can always be there, even for not just the birth parents, but also the extended family. There's families where, it could be on one side of the family. Maybe they're with the father side of the family the child is residing with. And then they can still have that connection even with the mother side, the maternal side of the family. So they just keep those connections and so forth. I mean, not to say adoption, that could be possible also. It just depends on the situation.
Yeah. Now, you referenced it a little bit, Felice, in your answer, but I'm wondering, and we talk about, again, the kinship continuum. How do your different programs kind of interact? And this is for everybody. How do you interact? How do you, connect together so that however a family comes in, family situations, we just referenced it. They could be very varied and different. How one family connects to their kin caregiver might be different than every other family in the continuum. But how do we provide this sort of expansive support structure for families, however they're connecting to the system, whether it's something that's more informal, like Kinship Navigator, it's something that's court-ordered, like Kinship Legal Guardianship, or it's something that's temporary, like the Kinship Resource Homes. How are we providing this continuum and working together across the different programs to make sure that however a family enters, they have some level of support from us?
Okay.
Everybody.
Okay. Well, like I said, with the KLG subsidy program, we do have that contact and with the Kinship Navigator. We refer, lots of families. I mean, it's even families who have called and they're not even connected with even DCPMP at all. And they've looked on the internet and they've seen something about, with KLG, and they want to know more about us. And then usually those ones, unfortunately, we're not able to help because we only help the families that are within DCMP and have been granted KLG through us. So if it's someone on the outside and they want to know more, then I definitely always refer the families to the Kinship Navigator Program to find out more about their resources. They have the wraparound funds, they have the family support programs to help families to move forward and just to have another connection and support group of other kinship families to interact with and meet up with. Because, like I said, we all need support.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so Kinship Legal Guardianship, Kinship Resource Homes, those are child protective services involved families.
Yes.
Kinship Navigator, they're not connected to the child protective services, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. We talked a little bit, and this is for everybody. So we've already kind of talked a little bit about the benefits of kinship. But I'm wondering from your perspectives, from the people that are on the ground supporting these programs, it's one thing for me to talk about it, but why kinship? What are the benefits to kinship? And maybe how has our system shifted toward kinship in the last 8 years?
Why kinship? It offers children a resource care greater placement stability, and maintains connections to their family and siblings, improves emotional and behavioral outcomes compared to non-kin placements. Most importantly, it is to preserve the family connection and community ties, which are important to a child's identity and emotional well-being. So it definitely benefits the children when we prioritize kinship placements.
Yeah. So thinking about, I think it was 2021, where our system made a transformation. It was a transformation moment for our system, where we were placing more children as of 2021 with kinship resource homes than in traditional foster home settings. This was the first time this has happened in our system, and we've maintained that since 2021. I'm wondering, Kimyatta, if you can talk a little bit about what has that meant for our system, and what has that meant for the families that we serve?
What has it meant for our families? It has meant that our children are in families that they are familiar with. There are connections to siblings, to living in the environment that they've known, that they're familiar with, that they're comfortable with. Also, it is a benefit that we have done a great job of placing children with kin and being able to make those connections. And also for our agency, that we're continue to make those connections. We're continue to strive to do better. That when we place children in homes that are kin, it's better for it's less traumatic. It's better for the stability. It's better for their overall well-being. And that, I think, it's better off for our agency.
Yeah. Has it improved our reunification rate at all?
Yes, it has. Yes, it has increased reunification. And also, I believe it has helped with children not reentering the system.
Yeah. And we were talking off camera too, but I think there's also probably something to be said about if you're in one of those kinship placements, children, I guess they tend to know granny's boundaries a little more than they might not know a foster care, parent's boundaries. So I think it's a better fit, right? Yeah.
It is.
For each of our programs, I'm wondering if we can talk about how kinship caregivers might be willing to step up as, we talk about resource homes, right? Resource versus foster care. But I think for all of our kinship caregivers, they can be a resource to the biological family. We talked about the improvement in reunification. How are our kinship caregivers stepping up to be a resource in those cases where reunification happens?
So, I guess I can say from our program, we do have quite a few vacates in which a lot of the children are going back with their birth parents. Mm-hmm. So, and I know that a lot of times, and even when I've spoken with some of the kinship caregivers and they want to vacate, they've been having that connection with the birth parents. It could be aunt or it could be the grandmothers. And they see that things have changed and that they are, they're working, they have residents. They have that connection and been visiting and seeing the child so that they can, they are able to go back home with the birth parents, which is a good thing, because I think they're working together. A lot of the families work together. I mean, sometimes it doesn't always work like that, but a lot of the times it does, which is good and is best for the child because that's less trauma. They're working and moving as a family unit, a whole extended family, which is best for the child, and it helps with both sides, the caregiver and for the birth parents to work together. They're working to grow together and to benefit the child to be supported through life.
Wondering, and this is for everybody as well, how easy is it to recruit kinship caregivers? Are we able to make that call, and how likely are people to step up when they receive the call that they may need to provide support for a grandchild, for a nephew or niece, for a neighbor, or somebody, a family friend?
I believe, we have seen that caregivers are willing. There's a high willingness to provide support to children in their care, but it is often met with, with little warning during a family crisis, and it could happen suddenly. This could be met with challenges, including lack of support, lack of financial, emotional burden, and legal issues. But despite these obstacles, with proper supports and services, DCP&P, resource and casework staff try their best to work through these challenges with Ken. If Ken is not willing and able to step up, then they still can be a support by offering maybe other family members that are willing to.
Yeah, and I mean, it might be that at the moment, maybe one kinship caregiver doesn't have the room in their home, or they don't have the resources to be able to provide, even though we do provide help in that space. But having that network of kin that can elevate and step in when needed to provide that stability for a child, I think that's perfect. My last question, and I want each of you to answer this. We're gonna go right down the line. So I said at the beginning, this is our kinship cage match. Talk to our audience. Why does your program, your individual program, deserve the name kinship, whatever, kinship support? Go ahead, Takysha.
Well, Kinship Navigator Program, we have observed a number of outcomes. There have been significant reduction in financial needs. We've been able to assist, families with, again, various needs that they've purchased, or things they need for the children, or again, back rent, utilities. So there's been a significant financial concerns. Also, there's been an increase in protective factors. Families feel more resilient. They're aware of, various community resources or therapeutic services that the child may need. They've learned how to advocate for themselves through some of our, just their connections with other caregivers and, lived experience and, being able to build that rapport with other caregivers. So just within our program, there have been significant outcomes through families' involvement with the Kinship Navigator Program.
Kimyatta, she makes a really good case for why Kinship Navigator Program should be the king or queen of kinship. What do you got for me?
Kinship caregivers provide benefits that improve outcomes for our children, strengthen families and communities, and definitely reduce the pressure on child welfare systems, right? It also will put a focus on engaging the families, existing strength and supports that will be able to increase success and reunification for children and reentering care.
Okay. All right, Felice, bring it home. Why is KLG the rightful heir to the term kinship?
I think kinship is important, is keeping those familiar, psychosocial, emotional bonds together, and to be supported. We're there to support those relationships and those families. We're helping, providing the subsidy, we're providing the Medicaid for the families. We're trying to support them in anything, even if they're having problems with school and the child needs an IEP. We're directing them to the right people to help with those supports, medical, behavioral issues. We have the supports of the AKLG, clinical services for the families to talk and work through problems or issues that the children and the family themselves might have. And it's keeping those bonds and forming new relationships, even with the kinship caregivers, with the birth family, or that are already family, but some who are unrelated homes, who are building new relationships and building bonds and growing and becoming stronger. And we're there to support them. And there are more families that are, have more subsidy approvals that are coming through, more so than before. So we're growing. We're there to support. It's a learning process. Takes time, but like I said in the beginning, it takes a village to carry through and to move forward and be strong for these families and these children in the program.
Well, I tried to stoke a little bit of competition, but you're all working together. You're building the village. You're working collaboratively, and maybe it doesn't make for the best podcast content, but it makes for a great system for families that we support. So thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. Kinship, we're kin.
Yep.
And we're working together.
Yes, that's it.
So next month, we have a very special episode. It's a little bit of a return to form for us. I'm going to be inviting Commissioner Beyer to the set. We're going to talk a little bit about what the last 8 years has meant for our department. But whether we're talking about things like the transformative potential of kinship relationships and what that's meant for our system, or we're talking about any number of other transformations that have happened through DCF. It's been a pleasure to bring these conversations to all of you. So next month, tune in for more DCF on the Air. And on behalf of my producers and the Office of Communications and Public Affairs, this is Jason Butkowski signing off. Tune in next month for more DCF on the Air.